What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Aftersound here, bringing you Splinterlands content every single day. We also stream right here on the channel every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday morning, so come by and say hello. All right, guys, I am revisiting the Land Trade Hub. It's been almost a week now, maybe like 5 days or so that it has been out. And I saw a lot of comments that had come in. And so I wanted to make a video addressing this just because there were quite a few. And that way, when I do the Q&A video, I can easily just go back, reference this video for people that had a question or a concern or just a comment. In fact, one of the comments was that I probably judged this a little too harshly, a little too much book by its cover, because I was looking at things on day one, and my response to that remains true. I genuinely think if I'm referencing the right video, or sorry, there's the only video that I did, right? But if I'm remembering my argument specifically, it is the fact that land did not have as big of an impact as many of us were thinking. Sorry, the trade hub. So if I remember correctly, we were at about 7 million DEC that was being used. It's up to 19 million now that we're like 5-6 days in. That's not a lot to me, right? I wanted to see hundreds of millions of DEC get locked up in here. Did I think that was going to happen? No. I mean, maybe in my wildest dreams, but there's just not much liquidity. It's $30,000 right now. So I was probably being just a little too optimistic, right? I mean, if we 10x this, right, 10x the value in there, that would take us to $300,000 worth of liquidity, but that would get us close to 190, 200 million DEC that would be in the market, which would be awesome, right? Because that would make it comparable with some of the others. But at the end of the day, there's not much. Now, that being said, couple other things that I want to address. The fees, which we'll get to in a second, because people have had questions about, not the payments, right? So the rewards, we'll get to that at the end, just because people have had questions about that. But I do want to recognize that there is a lot of trade activity that is currently happening in the market. You can see here, the 24-hour trade activity is $680. So there's a lot of trading going back and forth, which again is interesting, but it's like, I don't know how long that will remain, right? So $680, you got 30-day trade activity, which is only like 5 days or so right now, is like, it's pretty high. But to get into the reward side of things now, so I want to recognize that it is high, but I don't know if there's just a lot of people who are sitting on a lot of grain that have just decided to sell off, or people decided to start buying grain, or whatever the case is. But the way that rewards work in here is not the way that rewards work in the other traditional liquidity pools. Now, in that video, or like in the last Q&A video that I did, I started it and I went into like a probably way too long of an explanation of how liquidity pools work. But the major point was that liquidity pools primarily get their rewards, the people who are providing liquidity get rewards from them through the actual liquidity pool, not from external rewards. Now, those external rewards happen all the time, whether it's on PancakeSwap, whether it's here in Splinterlands, whether it's even on Tribal Dex, right, and the Tribal Dex pools. But primarily, where you're looking at it is a portion of the fees. And when you collect those, they are automatically added. Well, actually, sorry, let me rephrase that, because this is going to be confusing. You cannot collect them. There's no place to go and hit redeem rewards, because that's not how it works. Every time somebody does a transaction in the liquidity pool, right? So in this swap, anytime somebody swaps for grain or DEC, vice versa, whatever it is, that 0.25%, or actually here it's higher, right? It's like 10%, 5% of it gets burned. The other 5% goes to liquidity pool providers. And that 5% gets distributed and it gets added to your overall balance within the pool. So I haven't added anything in. I tried day one and it was giving me some weird error. So I just decided to sell all my grain. But I do want to add some in now, just so that I'd be able to show. So unfortunately, I don't have it here. But your share, right, it would remain the same, but your overall liquidity, so if you look at grain and DEC, that would start to go up over time. So it's automatically added in. You can't go in and claim it, but it's just always there, and it's always increasing every time there is a transaction. Now, the thing is, this stuff is so dynamic, and obviously it's very volatile too, right? DEC is supposed to be a stable coin, but it's not. So as a stable coin, it's volatile. And then of course you're going to get grain, which is kind of like a brand new token at this point that is going to be volatile in and of itself, based on supply, demand, and all that. But that in that way, it's very difficult to understand or to like see a linear like rise, because again, and I'm probably getting too far into the weeds here, like especially with like DEC and grain. DEC has some upside right now because it's below peg. Grain, we don't really know like long term what it's supposed to do, what it's supposed to be. But hopefully there will always be some kind of stability, right? People will always need grain in one form or another. And maybe like the equilibrium is super high right now. Maybe it'll get lower over time. Maybe it'll shoot up, right? Whenever we get whenever we get like land 2.0 or whatever that is, and you get a bunch of other things. So people stop producing grain, they start producing other resources. And so therefore all of a sudden the grain supply starts to go down, right? But grain demand remains the same. And so like, this is what I'm saying. Like there's all these different equilibriums. So when you look at your contribution, you can look at this and come in and see like, oh, you have, 1,000 DEC and whatever the corresponding amount of grain is. Then you come back later, and if grain goes up, for example, in value, you would actually have more DEC, right? That's not even including your rewards. Your rewards will get added in there, right, for everything. But overall, it's just a very dynamic, complex, and absolutely awesome and really cool, just fundamental thing, I might add. But it's hard to measure. And so what I would love for them to see, or what I would love for them to add, and what I'd like to see here, and maybe this is already the case if you have added, is what your dollar value is, because it shows dollar values for like the total liquidity provided and all the trade activity. But if you were to add something in, I do wonder if there would be some kind of value, US dollar value, where you could be able to measure that over time. Now, again, that's going to go up and down as the price and value of both grain and DEC go up and down. But in the long run, if you just keep it there and you're earning that 5%, and we are doing $600 worth of transactions every day, which is kind of insanity to me. In fact, hold on, I just want to see here. If I was to buy 1 grain, how much is 1 grain right now? 0.01 DEC. Okay, so 1 DEC would get you 54. All right, that's interesting. So, this is kind of what we expected, but hopefully that answers some of the questions that people have had about how they claim their rewards. It is not like the SPS rewards, because what ends up happening, and I'll close off with this, what ends up happening if you have these SPS liquidity pool rewards, these are external. So when you go over into, let's say, whether it's the SPS BNB, SPS ETH, or if you're just hearing like the voucher SPS, let's keep it simple. Voucher SPS, SPS swap.hive, DEC SPS, DEC swap.hive. These 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Little L shaped here. These are all on the Hive blockchain, or on like the layer 2 Hive engine. And so in there, right, the way that Hive Engine has it set up is that there is a 0.25% fee charged every single time. Every single time there's a transaction, and that goes out to liquidity pool providers or liquidity providers. Now, again, that's getting automatically added to your stack there that's provided liquidity. So over time, it should slowly start to go up, but everybody's will go up in proportion, right? If nobody ever changed anything and like it was just you that provided liquidity, over time you would increase because those fees would come back to you. But obviously it's getting split between everybody. And then of course some people take liquidity out, they put it back in, they add some, they take some out, whatever the case is. So your share is always changing based on how much you've put in versus how much everybody else has put in or taken out. But in order to incentivize us to go and add liquidity, right, you come here and you can also claim SPS. And this is one of the things, Clay's trying to do that sushi swap bond thing with, because it's like, are we always going to do this? Because it'll always, be a drag on the SPS price and value for just renting liquidity, which is what it's called, right? Rather than the DAO potentially owning the liquidity rather than paying people to provide it over time. So again, I feel like I'm getting too far into the weeds here, but this is external. You can get whatever the APR is, right? And it's not 0.25%. 0.25% is the fee, right? But it depends on what the volume is. So if there's a lot of volume happening and there's not a lot of liquidity, so for example, let's go back to land and let's get the 24-hour APR here, right? So 680, for example, and you won't be able to see this, but like 680 divided by 3580, we'll call it. That's, oh my God, that's 0.02. That's 2% per day, which is kind of nuts. Multiply that by 365, and that's an 800% APR right now. So yeah, the people who went in heavy on liquidity early on, they're doing quite well. They're collecting, and here's the thing: a lot of that is still. There's probably like an asterisk or a gray area there because it's just so volatile. So I wouldn't even trust a lot of these until things have stabilized out. Either way, I think people are probably eating well right now. Those who had put in. I wish I'd been able to, but unfortunately it just didn't allow me to, and I just moved on. But, there's an opportunity here. We'll see if this continues. Again, I think if it continues at this rate and all of a sudden like the trade activity is in the, mid three figures, right? So 500-ish per day, this liquidity is going to start to increase over time, especially because I'm making this video now and I know that I want to add some to try and get in on that. Everybody else is going to add some to get in on that. But if the trade activity doesn't change, then, and it's just 500 per day, but all of a sudden we have 300,000. Well, that goes down very, very quickly. So that's all I had for you guys in this video. I feel like I went on a bunch of different tangents, but hopefully this covered several of the comments that came up in some of the recent videos. So, when I respond to those, I will be referring back to this video. And if you have any other follow-ups or questions, you can leave them here, obviously. And I'm happy to dig in further. But that is all I have. Have an amazing rest of your day. I'll catch you all in the next one and see you around the game. Take care.